Hello traders and welcome back to another market update. My name is Nick and today we're going to be taking a look at the currency market and taking a look at some of the major currency pairs to look for some potential trade setups as well as general technical analysis. So we're going to start out with Euro USD, which has a pretty clear picture. You can see if we draw this trend line here, you can see that Euro USD overall is trending to the downside and currently pulled back to a major trend line level of resistance here on the daily chart. Now you can see price is already kind of reacting to this level here. You can see price came up in here. We found some sort of a bearish pin bar and now saw some sort of rejection off that level. The price, that we're going to be looking for is going to be if we can see if price can head back down to this major structure low that price has tested twice now. The question will be, can we break through that level to continue this trend, or will that be a triple bottom kind of setup there to potentially find some sort of bounce? Now, I think that there's a good chance that we do break that level just because of the overall strong downtrend that we've seen here on Euro USD in the last several months and even years now. So if price can get down into that level, that's going to be a place to look for potential breaks or potential signs of continuation to the downtrend that we are seeing, potentially to get involved at a calculated level. GBP USD is going to be our next one, which is actually kind of an interesting currency pair right now because you can see we did kind of rally very, very strongly. We've been very bullish on this pair, but price overall actually has been pulling back recently. And the question will be what price will do when it gets to this major trend line here. If price can get back down to this level, there's a pretty good chance that we find some sort of a bounce here, but we may see kind of a continuation to the downside just because of the overall downtrend on GBP USD that we have seen for quite some time. As price comes down, there's another trend line that I'd like to just consider, which is going to be this longer term one here. You can see that could be a potential overall level if price continues to the upside that we may find bearish resistance at. Also, if we level up this level here, you can see that we had a multiple structure here as well as here. Right, so these could be potential levels of potential resistance here coming into this uptrend here in the context of this overall strong down push. USD JPY is going to be our next one, which actually gapped down. You can see that we did gap. If we kind of calculate that out, it looks like around 60 pips, so massive gap to the downside here on USD JPY at the start of the week. You can see this is the weekend gap going from Friday of last week to Sunday or Monday of this week. See price gap down significantly, and we have tried to kind of fill this gap already, but we are finding a barrier right around this level. You can see that this structure here actually held as a resistance point and stopped the gap. Now the question will be, can price break this level to fill that gap completely, or are we going to actually find a reversal? Now if price starts to make a movement to the downside, I think we see some sort of support right around here. Why is that? Well, if you look, you can see that when price gapped open here, it actually found support right off the bat, found it again on a second retest, and now may act as a level of support going forward where we could find some sort of bounce. Next up is going to be, we're going to do Brent crude oil next. You can see we did gap up significantly now, and that's also a lot of times where you're going to see the CAD currency pairs gapping quite a bit as well, is we had some movement on oil. Now you can see price gapped up significantly, but he has started to kind of fade the gap so far. The question will be, can it come back all the way down to fade and fill that gap completely, or are we going to find some sort of support as we are starting to see here to continue that gap potentially to the upside? Now, if we do continue to the upside, we do have some major levels to watch for, maybe as a potential major level of resistance here. And you can see price did already kind of respond to this area as a level of resistance as well. We started to push up, but overall have faded so far. I think there's a pretty good chance, though, with this gap that we could see continuation as it came on some major news and might have enough push to kind of maybe even fill the gap and continue higher, or just to find some sort of level of support here. Maybe something around this area might be a support level, something like that, to potentially find some extra fuel to push this gap higher. WTI crude also gapped up. You can see it actually held its own a little bit better. It pushed up, held kind of that area, and generally has not moved too much from that point. You can see if we bring it to the 4-hour chart, you can see the same kind of thing. Has not moved significantly, but overall same kind of idea. We did come into a level of resistance here. You can see price tried to break through it, but had a little bit of trouble there getting past that level, and now kind of holding the general area. XAU USD is going to be our next one, which did gap up this week as well. You can see that we did get a significant jump up off over the weekend. We found support right along the bottom here, and we did get some sort of catalyst that pushed price above the current prices up to this point and kind of has been chattering since. Now going forward, we are still in the context of a very long-term strong uptrend, and so it would not be out of the question to see this gap continue, as price, you can see, is again in a very strong uptrend at a major level of support in this trend line pullback zone. Could be interesting to watch this going forward. Might be some opportunities to trade this to the long side, or if we do see a major break, you could look for confirmation to find some sort of sell trade setup. USD Canadian, as I mentioned, is going to gap because of that gap on oil, right? Because the CAD has a lot of correlation to oil, right? Because the Canadians have a lot of kind of trade and sort of their economy is built around oil in a lot of ways. So they're going to move when oil moves. Now, what you can see is USD Canadian gap to the downside here. We did gap, but we did start to come back to fill that gap, but we didn't quite get all the way back. You can see that's where we opened the gap. And this is where we currently, how far we got. So we still have some room there, and we'll see if price can continue upwards to push up into that area to close the gap, or if we're overall going to fade and continue lower. Now, in the context of USD Canadian, if we back up a little bit, we've been relatively sideways on this pair, so it's not out of the question if we just continue to chop around for a while. There are some major levels of support as well as resistance to look for. This level might be a level of support if we can get a pullback to that area. Something to consider and something to look at going forward. Again, might still have the bias of closing this gap, however, just because how often gaps usually get filled in the currency market. USD Swiss is going to be our last one for the day. You can see we did gap down on this one, but we filled the gap completely. And now the question will be, how are we going to react to this general area that we're currently at, which is kind of right here. You can see if we back up, a nice little structural zone right here as a potential level of resistance. And if we do see this resistance hold, it would not be out of the question that we see the context of a starting downtrend here. You can see if we back up again and we draw kind of a 4-hour chart line, you can see the question right now is, are we going to hold this level? You can see that this kind of trend line level of support has been holding so far. If we can break down through this resistance, if we put in a lower low here, or a lower high, I'm sorry, we might see kind of structure to the downside and continuation to potentially form a downtrend. Looking for signs of that before getting involved though, as I will not kind of short into this uptrend unless I have a good reason to do so. And I think that we would need to see some sort of break of structure. Guys, thanks so much for joining me. My name is Nick, and we'll catch you next time on the next market update.